Welcome, everybody. This is the Artist Focus, and today we have a special guest from Nigeria, Lagos. Welcome, Odun Orimolade. Before I let you talk, I want to say a little bit about you. You have an extensive artistic practice. You work multidisciplinary, and you also create performance artworks. You studied in Lagos. You studied painting, and it's very interesting to hear that you studied painting and to see what kind of work you are making. So maybe you could say something more about that later. And I also believe when I met you, you were pursuing your PhD. So you were a PhD candidate in Pretoria, in what's it, in South Africa, I believe. And so I would also like have a short question about that later on. You are now also lecturing at the let me read this, Yaba College of Technology in Lagos. Where you also are the sub-dean of the School of the Art, Design and Printing. You were also you have also developed there, or you were part of the developing the Yaba Art Museum. You have a function there as a curatorial director, and what you also have been doing since 2012, you have set up and coordinated performance art workshops. So when we met, that was in 2016. That was in Copenhagen. I was a master's student in Malmo, and you were participating in a project that was facilitated by Live Art Denmark. And it was a collaboration with CoLab, I remember also, which was usually based in Berlin with Mauricio Carvalho. I'm not sure if I remember his last name well. And so let me see. Well, thank you for being with us today, Auden. It's amazing that you're here and that we can see you, that you're still here, that the internet connection is still working.
Thank you, Ika. I'm delighted to be here also. Oh, that was a mouthful of an introduction. Thank you so much. I'm sure it was me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yes, sorry. Tell me. Yeah, what do you want to say?
Yes, it's been a busy time since we last met physically.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been a while also.
Yeah. Yeah. Just before we start to have a look at your works, we're going to show some video and images. We try to cover maybe 3 works. Let's see. I have some general questions. As Out of Sight or this artist focus also focus very much on performance art in public spaces. We happen to end up choosing works which, in my opinion, is very much about the memory, which is not necessarily works that are performances that are focused on the public space, on the street context. And so that's why, but you have also, you work a lot also in these spaces. And maybe it's also nice to just show an image of that briefly. And maybe you could say a little bit more, a bit about your experiences as you are a traveling artist. You've been in other places in the world. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your different experience and to compare it with your experience doing performance art in public spaces in the African context or the West African context?
This is the thing, and it's also the thing that runs in the performance workshops that we run at the School of Art, Design and Printing. Performance in the African environment it didn't start in the 1920s. It's something that's been imbibed in the culture. So there's this very strong strain of public performativity in the culture that makes performance practice in the contemporary context something that is embraced and not weird or how do you say surprising to the West African public. It's something that if activity or a performance project were going on, you would have an audience. In fact, it's more of a ready audience because it would take some time because for them to separate.
Oh gosh. This is what we could expect also. What I didn't say in the introduction is what happens is to be in connection with Odun from Nigeria is that we have unstable internet. And so in that case, we have something. And that is one of the works that we want to cover today is confrontation. And confrontation is a performance that I can talk about basically from memory. And we decided that I would share fragments of the work while Odun is trying to get the connection back. So confrontation, I'm just going also to show you the images. The interesting thing of confrontation is a work that is about phobias, and it took place in 2013 at the Eluguisi beach in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm going to read also what I have transcribed from that time, what Odun told me about this work. The performance is about phobias, the fear that the phobia consists of. The thing about phobias is that people tend to organize their lives around their phobias, so they don't have to go through these fears. I have this horrible phobia for large expanses of water. I don't go to the beach that much. I don't like lakes. I don't like walking near the water. I don't like swimming pools. And I don't like water in a tub. This aura, that power that large quantities of water have, I can't explain, but it makes you disappear. This thing I have with water affects me, but also my family. My family likes water, likes to go to the beach and boats. For the performance, I had my whole family invited, like my nephews, my nieces, close friends, the people with who I grew up, who know about my fear, and witnessed this performance. I saw them all going to the beach, which was strange because it was initiated by me. So I was thinking how to handle the concept of phobia. I found out in neuroscience that scientists have this theory about confrontation. Through confrontation, you trigger the memory of that fear, of that phobia, and it will erase. So I thought this might be a good thing to do as a performance. I had particularly two persons that I trust in this group. That was my husband and my sister. The sister is the one that comes immediately after me. I actually wanted my husband to carry out instructions, but because he witnessed so much of me, of what had happened to me before, he refused. So I asked my sister, and she agreed to do this. So what we did was I had myself gagged. I do this also in some other performances. I put something in my mouth so that I cannot speak. And then I had myself shrouded. My hands and feet were bound. I was lying on the ground, pretty much immobile and completely helpless, sort of, you can say, like a dead person. I thought a dead person is already dead. So if I can embody this state, there is nothing more to fear. Right, I see that Odun is back. And so let's continue where we were left, actually. This is going to be a very strange experimental experience. Let's see. We were talking about the performances, public performances in Nigeria, or your experience in Africa. Also, maybe we could, you could maybe also tell me a little bit, like the people, that was it. The crowd, they had to kind of become aware what was going on. I think that's the moment where we lost you.
Yes. Sorry about that. It's just the network. So, and this is the same thing that gets to become what we get to use in the workshops that we run here, because the institution in which I work is very densely populated for an art school, and performance comes as an extracurricular practice in the workshops that we run. This is the 11th year of our workshops, and you know, it's sort of like a hunting expedition or excavation expedition where you seek out potential performance artists. And because the first introduction they get to performance in the workshops is that in the public space, it's very easily relatable for them, and to have an immediate audience and an immediate reaction to whatever ideas or concepts they're trying to promulgate, it sort of gives a rush both to the artist and to the audience. For instance, in the last workshop that we had, which was in February, the new performers had something in the public space, and it was so short, and when the performance was over, we had half the the driveway coming down to ask, when are you going to continue with what you were doing? So there is a sort of a ready audience in this context. It's not necessarily a quiet audience, so to speak. Yeah. They're very vocal, they're very participatory, they like to interact. Yes.
Shall we? Thank you, Odun. It's good to have a picture of that. Let's continue to one of your first works, because I do have some general questions, but maybe it's better that we continue first to one of the pieces, which is the one Transmission Space from 2016. Shall we just first watch this brief fragment of the piece? Right.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to that one. All right.
Jeg kan huske, at jeg kører gennem København
So, Odun, I didn't mention. Maybe you could tell me also where this performance took place and what was the woman saying in this recording.
All right. So, okay. The transmission space was held at the NLH space, and sorry, I might not pronounce this right, but it was in Copenhagen. It was sort of a tangent off the project in which I was working with live art and collab editions. I was actually in the middle of research with a research partner, Meta Garfield, and the project was actually about memory and how far memory goes, and the distance of space, and it was situated in fetal memory and the possibility of fetal memory. That was what that research was, but transmission space was sort of a tangent off it, and it was dealing with the mental spaces, and mental distance and memory, and how, in the context of how much the different kinds of memory that come to play, and how far we actually can remember as in our conscious state. And the NLH space was kind enough to host us. It was in this double-sided room. So we had two parts to the performance. People were in the upper room, and we were in a basement space, and we sort of tried to recreate like a womb. And that very loud thumping sound which you heard was a recording of a heartbeat, actually. So it was a very overwhelming once you come down into the space. And the only light that was coming into the room was that projection of one of my drawings, which was a drawing of the womb, or well, what I think the womb should be like. I did the performance in collaboration with Dagmar Vestergaard. She is Henrik Vestergaard's daughter, which was my host at that time. And she sort of functioned as an extension of myself in that she was a child, and I was dealing with the, mental distances and memories. So we'd have the audience come down one by one into the womb space, down this, like a hatch, and they'd walk in, sit down, and throughout the performance, I was completely silent, and Dagmar was my voice, so to speak. So they'd come in, and of course, I love to make costumes. So I had costumes made for both of us. So we were sort of this twin selves of an older version of me and a younger version of me. And she would ask the audience that what was their last, what is their earliest memory, which sort of forces them to go silent first. I noticed that a lot. And they'd take their time and then respond. And, some would speak in English and others wouldn't. So I wouldn't understand what some people were saying. But I had a portable recorder. And when they speak, I would record, the memory. And once they're done, I played back. But there was a twist to it in this context of how memory works. Memory can be very tricky. It has this mystic thing about it. It could be borrowed. It could be transferred. It could, we know this thing about if someone tells you a lie long enough, you begin to believe it, and it's because it gets seated in your memory. So sometimes I'd play it back, and I'd play the exact memory back for the audience member, and that also has a different effect. It has another trigger that you get to start thinking about things that you actually forgot that you should have mentioned in that early memory. And Other times we'll play someone else's memory for that person, which throws them off balance. And sometimes they try to correct you and say, no, 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 that wasn't me. And some will just take it and leave. And after that interaction, once they hear the memory played back for them, Dagmar would tell them, oh, now I will take your picture, you know, to record the moment. So I had this Polaroid, you know, the Polaroid camera that, you know, gets to print out the picture immediately. So we'd take a picture of them and they'd wait for it. And she'd put the picture in an envelope, and the audience would be expecting to see a picture of themselves in that space. And sometimes they get a picture of themselves, sometimes they get a picture of a different audience member, and other times they get a picture of a drawing of a fetus that I made. So it was very interesting, the reactions that we got, because they immediately they're done, they thump on the ceiling and they have to leave the room. So they don't get to process before they leave the space, and they get to the upper room, and then they have this time to wait out ourselves dealing with the other audience members. And then when we finally come up the hatch, everyone you know, wants to talk about their memory again.
Right. Did people come back if they realized the memory they thought they were not correct, that they wanted to adjust their memory, what they said?
We actually had people that in the middle of the question would want to adjust the memory, and then a lot of others, when it was during the playback, particularly when they hear their own voice, sometimes they go silent, and then you know this thing when you raise your finger and you're like, oh, I should have said something more, you know, that kind of a thing happened. This is aside from people wanting to correct or say, oh, this wasn't my memory, or did I say that, or did I sound like that? Particularly if maybe it was a female or a male audience, and then you play back another voice of a female person, you have them listening even more carefully and wondering and questioning themselves if that was their voice or their memory at all. So it was an interesting experience for me.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Just looking at the time, I think maybe we could first see the next work of you, and I think there are some definitely topics that relate to one another. If you're okay with that, Odun?
Oh, I'm fine.
Yes. So let's continue with the next work, which is Spirits at the Ball. That's a performance from 2015. It's presented by Lilith Performance Art Studio. Let me look up, where is that one? It's over there. Wow, that looks really amazing. And yes, definitely the costumes. Whoa. So, Odun, I see what I recognize is the transmission space, and also in this piece, in Spirits at the Ball, is that your audience are undergoing an experience. They really are going from one stage to another. They come in a space and they undergo something, and then they leave again, and they are kind of participating as well. And also I see the connection with the first piece, which was this one is actually an earlier piece before what the transmission space, right? And also here I see the relation to memory, the historical memory, and and here I see this between the Western historical memory of the history of colonization, and I'm very curious how you worked in that here, as well as from the African perspective. So maybe you could say something about that, or you could tell something.
Okay. Interestingly enough, this project actually was dealing with institutionalized memory, and it was attended off workshops that we'd had in Nigeria, because we had this water don't pass workshop in which we had Nordic artists coming to Lagos and participating with and having their works presented with us. So the year in which they came, which was 2014, the year before this performance, was the year of the centenary in Nigeria. I mean, I put that in quote, please, in which Nigeria, in quote, turned 100. And this is it was the year 100 years of the amalgamation of, you know, the areas in which is now called Nigeria, and it was extremely contentious, you know, at that time. And there was a lot of debate and discussion over why is there celebration? Should there be a celebration? And, you know, all the post-colonial issues and where we are and where we're from. And because I'm coming from an academic space also, there were a lot of, won't you write something? Everyone is writing something. So, which I didn't. I didn't participate because it got to a point, it was a little tiring, because the space in which Nigeria is or was at that time was a little tumultuous, you know, and it's been so ever since that amalgamation. So it brought up this question about, you know, the need to, you know, deal with the memories that come, and this pointing of fingers, and the space in which I was coming from, everyone had some sort of role that they'd played in the past. So this is what gave birth to Spirits at the Ball. It's based on a hypothetical context of, you know, what the happenings that the things that happened after the Berlin Conference, which, you know, brought on colonialization. You know, the conference which I'm referring to is the one that Otto von Bismarck, you know, brought in people from different countries, and they sort of, you know, split up Nigeria. This is a whole, you know, discussion space, so I won't really get into that. But the performance itself, it dealt with all the other people that weren't mentioned. You know, every time they talk about these things, he's infamous because of this conference, and every country involved has been named. And but then they weren't the only people at the ball, you know. Every conference, then I'm sure the diplomacy that would have happened at that time, they would have this ball after, you know, this party, and it wouldn't have been for the conference wasn't a day's event. So the performance also lasted 3 days in itself, and it was based on all those, you know, maybe their families that could have traveled with them for the conference. They would have associates, diplomats, secretaries, slaves, servants, maids. All these people were involved in the happenings at that time. And even there was obviously would have been some Africans in whatever capacity. They might have been slaved. I mean, I wasn't physically there, but you can picture what a Boer was at that time. And it was used as a tangent to all these things. But I drew from I'm Yoruba, so I drew from a Yoruba worldview in which, in the Yoruba context, you do not die. You live on through your offspring. So for so long as you continue to reproduce, you bear your forefather's name, and the spirit of your forefather is there. And so this context was applied to everyone in that space. The audience, everyone had to become, the word is an emi. Emi means spirit, but you would contextualize it as a soul. So all the participants and the audience had to be not disembodied, because of course they're human, but they had to be endued, so to speak, with this level of masqueradery that pushes them into this space in which they are not themselves. They enter into this liminality where you don't get to see anyone else's face, because you are not identifying as yourself. You're identifying as everybody else or anyone else that could have been there at that time.
Yeah, and I noticed the costume, so they are part of that too. That relates to the spirit. It helps to get to this other state of mind.
Yes,
I understand that like that, and you cannot see any faces. I mean, I see this also in your other works, that you use the use of costumes, and that you cannot see your face. Is that related too?
I mean, because a lot of my work deals with this idea of overlapping realities. Most of the time, if you want to cross into addressing the context of space, most of the time when you're talking about people have different concepts of what reality is, and their relation to only reality in the sphere of what their eyes can see. But this is not so, because if you were to deal with theories of psychoanalysis and things like that, it leaves room for spaces of the mind, and spaces of the mind are also different. How do you say? They're a different tangent of experiences that I can relate to a lot to my Yoruba worldview, because in a Yoruba worldview, there isn't just one reality. There's it's a dual reality that is intertwined. So where things are impossible in one aspect, it's completely possible in a completely different aspect, and they influence one another, so to speak. So these are the concepts that were applied to this performance. And not just that, there was also an aspect of plural. Sorry, that was a tongue twister. Plurality involved, this thing about multiplicity, in which the audience comes into the space. They come in and they don't have any guidance. They come in and they see many of me, multiple selves, that end up getting into this, and they're immediately faced with this space of we call it egungun in Yoruba. When you come in front of a masquerade, and it's sort of almost a celestial being, and then this celestial being begins to dance a mazurka. So, and other European dances, and relating to things that in their memory they would understand and relate to, but is alien because those that are doing this dance do not come from that space. And it sort of also references activities that have happened after the conference, you know, and all that could be, and in the evolution of what being Nigerian has become over all this time. And as with a lot of my performances, the audience gets dragged into, you know, they pulled into the experience because they're supposed to leave the space and reflect. A lot of my work is in the hope of further reflection, and the reactions also that I got in the performance were very interesting, because you might have noticed that the dance comes to this crescendo in which I you know, come in through the percussion, and it sort of halts everything, and then there's an immediate interaction with the audience individually. They're each brought to me one by one, and when they come, I perform this sort of a tapping method that I learned in. It's not it's not a part of hypnosis, but it's a part of triggering memory. And I make the tapping along the vein that goes directly from the wrist to the heart. So which is in the body, and the body holds so many memories that it carries from generation to generation. This you can find in your DNA, so it's not, it's proven science. So
that's so interesting.
It's sort of,
yeah. Odun, yeah. No, but you were tapping the audience who were wearing costumes, right?
yes.
During that was part of the like part of the ritual. But did you do then something with their memory? Were you talking with them, or?
That's I've tried this I think in 2 of my performances so far, and I've had different reactions. It's not, it looks to you like I'm saying something, but then what I'm doing is dealing in the context of proximity. You know, it also happens to you, you know, maybe when you in this sundering concept of when you maybe are on a bus and you're in such close proximity to someone else, you begin to feel their energy. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's comfortable, and sometimes your mind idles away into what did they have for breakfast? What's going on in their mind? You know, things like that. And that proximity, you might notice my hands on their shoulders and me leaning into their personal space before the tapping. It makes them, it heightens their consciousness and makes them more aware of, you know, their environment and their own, you know, space of reflection. And that tapping, it brought different experiences. I had some audience that would come and fall at my feet and grab my feet. I had a woman in the space that ended up being carried out because I didn't understand, and it was a performance. I wouldn't know if I should stop what I was doing and make sure everyone is okay, or continue what I'm supposed to be doing and not let everyone else that's waiting their turn down. But it was a really, really interesting performance, because once they get in their hands, you might notice I was putting something in their hands. It was a touch of earth, a touch of ash, and a touch of blood, and they take it away with them, and they immediately made to exit that space immediately. So they don't get to look back. They don't get to, have an immediate reaction. They go out of the space and begin their reflection. And once the space empties out of the audience members, you would have noticed that the drumming starts, and we begin a dance. Which, I mean, I love to dance. So, and the audience is right out there in the outer room wondering, why am I not a part of that? What's going on? And so once we close and come out of the space to interact with them, there's this immediate need to reconnect and ask. I had several people asking, can we come in for the drumming? Can I come back in for the drumming? You know, so but then even before they leave the space, they will ask me or my other selves that was that absolution? they begin to question and come up with their own interpretations of what it was like. And because they were using things from their own understanding in the music and in the kinds of dances that were performed before I cut in with other ones, they have time to reflect in matching them up.
So it's very, very interesting all, and there's just so many, it's so rich, you know, the work. And but I also want to say, to see if we can have some space for maybe questions from the viewers today. But also I want to just go back into the moment when you were gone for a while. And I was reading your memory of confrontation. So also because you're here focusing on the memory that are in our cells or in our DNA, and by tapping them in a certain way. And then maybe we could make then now the bridge to confrontation, maybe to round it up and to open up for questions.
Yes.
Like, we've been looking at other people, but confrontation is a very personal work, right? And it's interesting, you are like here, I just started talking about it, and I just didn't came far. I just, I think we didn't even get really to the beach, but but it is clear, it is about phobia for large quantities of water. And what I know is that you created a performance around it, but also as a serious try to cure yourself from it. And so I also see here, our fears also phobias? Is that also a part of our memories, our embodied memory? How do you see that?
Well, I certainly believe that phobias are triggered by something. They're triggered by an experience that the body remembers. And in earlier research on something over memory, I interviewed a doula that was talking, that had spoken to someone that her son was scared of sounds and had no reason to, but then he kept remembering something that happened to his mother when she was pregnant, in her early stages of pregnancy, where she was in a, maybe a very bad situation, and there was, maybe some gunshots and things like that, and it became his trauma as a young adult. So I do feel, I'm not a scientist, but I am a researcher. I do feel that phobias are triggered, or they start out from something like that. For instance, I didn't know for a long time that I had an incident when I was much younger in which I fell into a swimming pool. And it was a lot after confrontation, when my family was telling my mother about it, then she mentioned, oh, Otto hasn't gotten over the pool. And I do not recall falling into a pool at all. But I do know how scared I am of, water, or, water in the bathtub filled up, or, any large expanse, a river, and things like that. And it's common knowledge. So I do feel that memory in this context is something that the body, tells us. It's like when you go to the hospital, the doctor would ask you that, oh, how do you feel? And you have this whole verbal conversation with the doctor, and then he says, let us investigate, after having your testimony, and he wants to ask your body for the truth. So I do feel that the body does, give this information to the brain. Then I'm not a neurologist or a neurosurgeon, but
it's so,
the brain,
yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because it belongs so much in the practice of performance art. I think this embodied knowledge that we work with in performance a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yes.
find it so intriguing that you turned something that you personally are like struggling maybe with, and that you also turned it into a performance. And that also performance is so much a blurring of everyday life and art. And I think in this case it's also quite like, where is the art, or are we talking about therapy in this case? And I like it that it's in between all these things, and that you also brought your family and friends to the beach to witness this.
My little
Yeah.
death.
Yeah. And but maybe we can open up for questions because we have short time, and if that's okay for you, Odun, can we?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Because I wonder if there are questions, because I don't see any questions right now, I believe. If there are any questions, if not, then we can continue talking about confrontation. Let me see, because I'm very much curious about, maybe we could say a little bit more, because I didn't tell everything about that performance, so
where did you
nobody
stop?
really knows. I stopped actually at the point that the selection of the choosing of where to go. So you were going to the beach. It's a hilly place, but not. Oh yeah, that you were tied together, and that and that you chose your sister to take up to do your instructions, and.
Okay.
But not at the point of really going into actions. We didn't go into that part.
All right.
So,
I chose the Atlantic Ocean because that's the largest body of water, a large body of water in our proximity in Lagos. So the performance happened at Elegushi Beach. I initially wanted my husband to do it, but to assist me, but he was there, but then he couldn't watch because he's aware of how scared I am of this. But then my sister, who's grown up with me and is also aware of this, is who handled it, handled the instructions. And the instructions were that I was shrouded, I was bound and then shrouded. In sort of how the burial rites in some areas here are. You know, they wrap up the corpse in white cloth or cream cloth here, some in some areas. And I before being wrapped up, I had a gag in my mouth, so I don't get to scream. Otherwise, I would have screamed endlessly. And my feet were bound, and there was this very huge rope that was tied to it, and we were on the edge of the breach, but the sand slopes down to where the waves crash, and the instruction was to drag me to the very edge of the water, not into the water, and then allow me to make the arduous journey of rolling myself back to safety. So it's a context in which it was so much easier to reach the danger in which I felt, and harder to get to the safety in which I so desired. And my sister was to do this 3 times and then stop, and we didn't complete it because my husband intervened at some point. She dragged me not to the edge but into the water, and I don't know, I think I had this outer body experience, and she dragged me into it and then left me. So you know how the waves come and lap at you and pull you and lap and pull, and I used every bit of strength to roll myself up the hill. And immediately I get to the point where it's marked as a safe space, I was supposed to have time to rest and, you know, take the experience in. But the minute I make the mark, she would grab me by my feet again and take me right back into that fear. And I was screaming, but no one heard. So, and I think when I rolled up the second time and she grabbed me and was taking me down the third time, I heard my husband screaming and saying, no, that you can't take her into, that she can't go into the water at all. And he just carried me and, you know, ended it and, you know, lay me on the rocks. And I really, really believe, you know, when you're scared out of your body, I really had that experience, and this questioning of myself and wondering if the cure that because I read confrontation of this phobia, or confrontation of phobias, as a means of one of the therapeutic means of curing these phobias. And it took this huge experience, and my family was there. They gathered around and you know, had so many questions. Are you still scared? I hope you're no longer scared. Did the water take you away? Is this you? You know, things like that. And I was literally catatonic. I couldn't speak. I think the only person that realized how further traumatized I was my husband.
There's also a question. Corin has put a question in the chat here. I'm intrigued to know what your daily practice is as a performance artist, embodied practitioners. I'm intrigued to know what your daily practice is as a performance artist, embodied practitioner. Do you understand the question? Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the question. What my daily practice as a performer?
Yeah, artist, embodied practitioner.
Oh, well, I think we all continue to evolve in our creative practices. I think maybe because I live my life and my other aspects of my practice within a learning space, I continue to evolve. So the things that might have been important at one time, they change with time. But I've come to realize that I do favor a lot of interaction in my practice. I favor a connection and not just an audience that is a witness. I'd rather an audience that has a connection and can make out an experience with me. And so look at or be into a performance and take away not what I'm promulgating, but what they have connected with through it. So a lot of my performances, as time has passed, has worked around that you know, idea. And a lot of the times, even when I deal with things that are intrinsically personal to me, I find means of connecting with other people, you know, and finding the link to them, because a lot of the works that I do, the hope is to attend to people's behavioral issues and how they deal with their own engagements with the social space around them. Because, you know, the external things that happen to us, they're the ones that inform the actions that we make, you know, or that we carry out in our lives. So if I can tap into that, then, I mean, you're controlling half the world, aren't you?
Let me see if I make a little bit contact with Corin, because the time is, we're sort of towards the end of the time, but there's also one question left here in the chat box, and I don't know if there's really time for it. Let me see, because we should end up right now. Or you can maybe give a, could you give a, try to give a brief answer on the last question, Odun? Is that possible? Let's try.
Okay, let me try.
Yeah, this aspect of memory is like a golden thread through your work. When you embark on a specific performance, what becomes the spark?
Performance for me comes alive in not in the planning. I mean, you can think of anything, but then you cannot predict what people will do. So the spark is the audience. The spark is that connection. The spark is how they react. I mean, we react to the people around us. The energy that comes to me is what I feed on and act on. I think that's it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, nice last sentence, I think. Let's, yeah, I think I'm sorry we cannot continue. The time is over, but I really want to thank you a lot, Odun Orimolade. I hope also for those who are now here attending, I hope you can, yeah, do you have a website actually? I'm not sure. I never found your website, I think. If people want to know more about your work, you know, so that would be nice. But you can Google and you find some interesting videos for sure, also on memory more. So do that.
All right, so
yeah.
let me give you a quick response to that. My website is under construction. I actually went dark around the time when we met, when I got swallowed into research, and I'm finally coming up for air. So hopefully we get to connect with more of my work. I had wished that Ieke got to talk about her own connections to confrontation, which maybe on another date or maybe in another interview she can talk about, because I found them her own interactions with it very interesting, and I have used it a lot in the workshops that we've had here. You know, this being part of someone else's memory of you that you weren't part of, and embodying it in evolving yourself. I found it very interesting. I really did.
I do also almost believe that words can become kind of also kind of a costume that you can put around your body, and then you're kind of in somebody else almost. But that's it feels like I feel almost like I love water. I dive into water, you know, I'm a water person, but I can also start to understand this fear, you know. I've been like seeing these flashes in front of my eyes. So yeah, so
you can imagine my petrification.
I might can work harder on it and then create a phobia for large quantities of water.
Oh no, don't do that.
It's not strange because with the sea level getting higher and everything, and here in the Netherlands, you should come to the Netherlands, or maybe not because we are below you know, sea level. It might be a bit too scary to be here, but
that body of icy water is literally alive for me. And I'm imagining your performance over it. You just need to take a walk through my mind and think about what I was thinking about your performance and how the water would be like, are you talking about me? And so I do hope we get to talk about it sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And also, I want to thank everybody who was viewing today. And when we are leaving, Corin will come on the screen and will announce the next artist focus. There will be an extra artist focus. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you also very much, Odun.
Thank you. Thank you, Ieke. Thank you, Corin. Thank you for having me.
Big thank you to you for sharing your work today. It was really a fascinating conversation and really important research. So big thanks. And I just want to share with everybody that we've added an additional program to the Out of Sight because of the war raging in the Ukraine right now and in other contexts around the world. We've invited an artist from the Ukraine to come and speak with us next Saturday, Yarina Shomska, who is a performance artist working in Lviv, will be sharing the work and how the conflict that has been ongoing in the Ukraine since 2014 with Russia. And so I just want to share that. So that will be next Saturday at 11:15 at the same time. And also talking about working with the ghosts and the spirits in the room. I just received my edition of Ashihi by Alistair McClellan, The Actional Poetics, and there's a wonderful chapter that really related to what Odun was talking about today, called Sometimes You Need Help from Other People's Ghosts. And I was really thinking about that in relation to the spirits in the ball that you shared with us. So we're going to be offering a 30% discount on, and Alistair is going to be talking about his new monograph at the upcoming Flow. And tickets will go, registration will take place from May 1st onwards. And so this is going to be an international symposium on public performance. So we do hope you can participate in that. And there will be some scholarships available. And it is full of practice-based workshops and lecture performance presentations by artists from around the world. But I want to say a special thanks to you, Odun, for sharing your work today. And big thanks to ieke for organizing the program today. And we hope to see you next Saturday. And thank you again for tuning in. Thank you all.
Thank you.